people are hungry. I took a sandwich because I know how we are. We're very passionate. We want to talk. I want to thank my previous speakers because I think what you guys have talked about a lot regarding social work is love and justice. Those two, how they are part of this, maybe the fundamental pillars in social work, at least for me. And you remind me of why I should have gone to the university. This is where we learn things for real. I grew up in this city, Lund, but I've lived more than half of my life in Malmö, which is a neighboring town. And so that's where I've done my work. And Lund, as you know, is a university town. But when I grew up here, a small part of this town was a very neglected area. And I grew up with a single mom in poverty. And so it's complicated living in Sweden, working in Sweden, talking about poverty and social injustice. Because we have an idea about what Sweden is, and that's where we need to start. We have to kill the myth of Sweden. This is true, because if we are blinded by our ideas about what Sweden is, then we cannot see the real issues, and we cannot manage and work to better the situation, especially for young people. So this article, when I Googled what the world thinks of Sweden, this is what I got. This is from, you can see, 5 months ago, so this was this fall. And so there has been a lot talked about gun violence and youth gangs and gangs in Sweden over the past 6 months, 7 months, and the previous years really. And for me, I've worked with young people for 20 years plus, and secretly had this idea of becoming a writer, an author. And this idea, or really kind of an existential need, was sprung out of just the experience of what the previous speakers have talked about. What we know of reality, what we see and what we feel, but don't necessarily have the courage maybe to express, and we keep inside of us. So my whole experience, I published this book when I was 41, so this is only a year and a half ago about, and my second book was published this fall. But prior to that, I just worked pretty much in silence, and I was out in Malmö working, and then back to my 2-room apartment for a very long time. Writing, reading, social work. So this was my almost isolation, and then kind of a hyper-social reality of a lot of violence. So it was back and forth, trying to make sense of this society we've created, and the lie that is very much part of it. So, Sweden, what I took from this article was this. Sweden has the second highest gun crime rate, death rate in Europe. Behind this is poverty and inequality. So those are the drivers. And the cities that often are mentioned as violence hotspots are Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmö. And also, maybe the most frightening aspect is that most of the perpetrators and victims are very, very young. A lot of them are children. And I've also included this quote from the article, which one cannot not talk about when you talk about these problems, and try to analyze them. Because we have a narrative in Sweden that people like me with a foreign background are the problem. When every, if you have some kind of moral and you're intellectually interested, you find different drivers of what make people commit crime and so on, and join gangs. What is also frightening is that I had to really read the Guardian article to find this analysis. So it's not only the politicians, in this case the far-right government, I call them the far-right government, it's not just the Sweden Democrats, it's the whole, all those parties that run this country at the moment. They, along with the media, has created a narrative about Sweden where it's very confusing, because on the one hand we have this, they create this myth of white Sweden with the welfare state and everything was very good in the 50s. They were not, things were terrible. And then you have this idea that all foreigners, which in reality keep this country running without running the country. So this paradox, this is something we struggle with when we work, especially with young people. So it's how we understand the country and the problems in this country in order to really find solutions. So, I've lived and worked in Malmö for a lot of years, and the problems that I just mentioned, if you look at the bottom of this slide, it says Malmö has the highest child poverty rate in Sweden, the highest rate of inequality, highest rate of unemployment, and for a long time it was the kind of capital for gun violence in Sweden. What you cannot read, namely because it's very small and it's also in Swedish, it says that part of an area called Rosengård, which you may have heard about, it's one of the most stigmatized areas in all of Sweden. It says that 80% of the children in this area have Gola, which is called. They're in risk of living in poverty. And this is twisting the facts. They're not at risk. They are living in poverty, a lot of them. So this is also how we a lot of times are fed with the information about how things are. So they're not at risk. They are actually living in poverty, meaning the most fundamental needs are not met. So I'm not going to be very theoretical, and I'm going to step away from the right-wing government analysis and so on, and try to make this kind of into a love story, really. Because, like I said, for me, social work is working in practice. It's social work for social justice. And social justice, to me, is a passion for people, especially vulnerable people, the love for them. If you don't have this, I think you're in the wrong business. So we are here, first and foremost, to be kind of gatekeepers for the interest of vulnerable people. I didn't realize this until I was 23 something. Before that, I wanted to become either a famous rapper. So you see, I still have this swag about me, even though I'm 40 plus. Can't get rid of it. Or I wanted to become like a basketball player. So I was a basketball player, but I'm very thin and short and weak and so on. So I didn't really make it to the level I was dreaming of. But to make a living, the club that I worked for was, they started this project called Hela Malmö. I came out to these areas to work with the kids, and I just fell in love with the work. And I put those dreams aside, and I decided what I'm going to do with my life is work for the betterment of people like this, young people like this. And so, the love story then, it's kind of a dark love story, but it's, so this first book, Will You Care If I Die? It's called in English. I started writing in 2012. So I had this dream of becoming an author, and and at home, it was a very effective way to just kind of not think about what was going on in the city, because at this time, early 2012, especially at that time, there had been a lot of murders. So 6 murders had occurred where all the victims, in one way or another, was someone I knew or knew about. So at that time, there was this kid. His name, you see here, Elijah. This is him. I had gotten to know him through the work in the community, and he had a strong passion for basketball, but he also had problems at home, and also growing up in one of those so-called vulnerable areas. And so when I thought about giving this talk, I have the organization that I work for. We have a lot of ideas. I have some statistics and theories, but at the end of the day, what I feel is most important, especially with this peer perspective, is working with the client or the kid. That's all that matters at the end of the day. This is what we're here for. And so this is a story, so I'm going to tell it a bit using slides, and it's basically the full story, so you don't have to read the book. So this was early 2012. So I can read just a short passage at the beginning. But Elijah, I had known him when he was 9. I knew he had a lot of problems. I also knew that in a lot of ways I thought I could help improve his chances of pretty much surviving his childhood. And I say that without exaggerating, because just a couple of years ago we could see there were a lot of faces of young people who were his very closest friends, and I think 9 of them were either had killed someone, or was in prison. So he was probably one of the toughest kids around. And so for a couple of years, I trained him, we hung out, but I just kept him at a distance. Until that spring day in 2012, where I pretty much decided, I told him, you can come, get away from your area, you can stay with me, sleep in my house or my apartment one day a week. And he took the chance instantly, and he moved in. He took his bags and he was like, yes. So can I stay also Monday to Tuesday and so on? And then he stayed with me for 2 years. And this is the first day there to the left. I didn't give him a blanket. He stayed on the couch, no food, nothing. And this is also what I tried to write about. And you guys have the previous speakers, you've done such a good job of explaining this inner battle with working with people, how you make it a long-term thing, but also how you have to look within. Why am I here, and how did I end up working with this? And so for many years I was writing. I tried to write about my experiences, but I felt like I was almost lying. It felt like I couldn't create literature out of the experiences. But when Elijah moved in, actually the very first night, I started writing as a letter to him, and instantly I felt like something clicked, and I knew that I just have to keep writing. And that first night I wrote the following. For many years now, I have been working with young people in the areas that are described as vulnerable. The children there seek me out. It's a talent of mine. I play basketball with them, I provide them with food, we study and hang out. The youngsters pine to be close to me and under my protection. I embrace them, I ruffle their hair, and I think about how they may die. 22 children and adolescents in close proximity to me have either been murdered, have murdered, or have died from overdoses. I can see their faces, their way of looking up at me, their eyes filled with curiosity and anxiety. And then, when death comes along or when a child kills, the way the light in their eyes is extinguished. I have more difficulty remembering the children's funerals. I can only grab on to the odd fragmented memory, a small coffin proportioned to the body, a worn-out football and a pile of flowers, a framed class photograph, the deafening silence. There's often a strange stillness at young people's funerals. It's as if those who are close to them are holding their breath, until the silence is cut by the cry of a parent like a bolt of lightning. A cry so heart-rending, so filled with despair, that the chilling realization of what has been lost also seems to strike me down. So how do one write about these experiences? How can you turn it into literature? To the right on the screen is Elijah driving a car, probably a stolen car when he was like 14. Not only did he drive the car, but he also told his friend to take a photo of him and send it to me so he could brag. We had a very strange relationship. I'll just ask Cecilia, how long can I go on? Because
we have to leave here like in 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, so I'll speed up a bit. So this is Elijah when he had stayed with me for about a year. As you can see, early on he started asking me, what are those square type of things you're holding on to in this area that aren't computers or phones? And I told him these are books. And he wanted to, hang out with me and talk to me. And I said, my apartment is yours, but I have to read. I have to write. I have to do my thing. And then a way for him to kind of, be with me was me reading out loud. So his interest in literature was me really sitting on this couch, him laying down, and we were just reading. And his grades, all of his grades went up when he kind of moved away from his kind of destructive milieu to stay with me, and when he began reading and began also seeing the value in himself. And I'll also add to the list of all the things that are killing children in Sweden, the fact that the schools are really, excuse my French, they're really shit. A lot of the schools in these areas. They are so problematic. And Elijah, he went to a school that one of the main newspapers in Sweden called the worst school in Sweden. So they have these lists. And I'll read a small passage. One night when we sat in the kitchen practicing vocabulary, you said, "You know what, Nick? Last year my school was ranked the second worst in Sweden. Now the school that used to be number one has been closed down, so we're in first place." I said, "You mean the last place?" You said, "No, we're the best at being the worst." That sentence etched itself into me. The best at being the worst. You put your finger on what happens to many of the children that are pushed by society into the far reaches of existence. It's impossible to go along passively with the surrounding world's view of one as a worthless human being. Nor is it very easy to shake off a stigma like that once it's burned itself into one's psyche. The worst school in Sweden says something about the pupils that go there. It says, these are the worst children in Sweden. You relate to the branding in just the same way as all people do. On the one hand, you need to consider your worstness, turning it into a badge of honor, something desirable that you can boast about. But at the same time, you embody this deeply demoralizing picture. You confirm the prejudices and live up to the expectations. So what I saw working with Elijah, or rather having him so close to me, was I mean, he's just a beautiful kid, intelligent. He wants to, play basketball and have a good life. But all the, the external factors that keep pushing him, away from that. How the adult world really, in a lot of ways, tries to kill him. This was so evident, having a kid at home like that for such a long time, to really see how his chances were so slim because of what adults have created for him, in a way. Moving on. I have 10 minutes. Elijah, he became, a better and better basketball player. He made the youth national team. A crazy American agent called and said, there might be a chance for you having a full scholarship, thank you, to go to the United States and play and have everything paid for. And I said, this is absolutely insane. I had never heard of such a thing happening to a 15-year-old from Sweden. But we went there, we visited 3 schools, came back to Sweden, all 3 called and said, sorry, we can't take him. And then one night, the crazy and very nice agent called me and he said, there was this janitor at one school, do you remember him? And I said, yes, I remember, because he was a bit older, carrying balls and mopping the floor and so on. What's with him? And he said that this janitor had talked to the principals and said, the Swedish kid, is he coming? And they were like, no, we don't have the money for him, sorry. We wanted him to come. And this janitor said, I'll pay for everything. So, thank you. And he left the room. And so the agent called and said, Elijah's dream is coming true, and he's moving to the States. So he did, because of this janitor, and here he is on graduation day. And also he was named the best player in all of Eastern United States. I'll also mention that even though his main language is Swedish, he still had A's and B's basically in all the subjects. So he really excelled. So his intelligence combined with his fierce determination, really became kind of a Hollywood type of story. He went on to play for the University of Illinois for a year. He then got a lot of offers from professional clubs, and so he left his studies and became a pro basketball player. He also made the national team, men's national team here in Sweden. This is us last year. And I'll tell you a short kind of dark story, and then the love, as I promised.